Welcome again on stage 2. I am very happy to announce to you the talk of Isidora Nikolic and Uros Krcadinac from the Faculty of Media and Communication. They come from the Singidunum University in Belgrade, Serbia, and in their talk they will give us an alternative way to experience data by putting it into the context of experience design. Not only will they talk about their work tonight, but also show it. In the entrance hall of the Cinema Museum, our other building, they set up their installation, Infographics Live, and it can be seen all day tomorrow. But now, actually, welcome on stage.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everybody.
Nice to see you here. We will try to give you a brief introduction to some of our actions that we actually do in our educational platforms. There are different platforms. But the first project that we will explain is actually something that we just installed, that Christina announced in the hall of the Cinema Museum. And it's something that we've done for the first time in March this year, 2017, in Belgrade. And it came from the necessity to be critical about data. Because nowadays in these conferences you will hear the word data or data visualization all the time. But
I even saw once that they were printing some t-shirts with data sexual.
Yes, I saw captions. I love data with the heart.
Yeah.
And we actually are the founders of one of the conferences about graphic design and visual communication, and we wanted to do something live. We wanted to invite people to not, as Christina just said, come and see, but actually come and take part. And this is the brief text that we wrote about the big data, how we think about it. And we wanted to criticize it, and we wanted to say that it's becoming more impersonal. And some of the activists say that big data is like new oil or new wood, that it becomes a commodity and makes rich people even more richer. And we wanted to make a step back and talk more about people. So we said big data is big and what can we do about it? And then we came up with the idea to deal with something that is opposite, like small data. And what we did is we invited people to participate in live action, as we invite you now to come from tomorrow to the hall of the Cinema Museum. And we invite you to take action, to participate, and to create small data. And now we will try to explain how we do it. Basically, in a space, we create diagrams, and these diagrams are constructed out of vertical and horizontal lines, which have a certain poles. And in these poles, there are certain words that kind of define us. It's like, are you an idealist or a realist? Are you more for an avant-garde or a postmodern? Are you more for a monochromatic color palette, or you are more for a rainbow color palette? And in this installation that we did, it was kind of fascinating for us, because we invited people just to put small dots, in a big diagram, to put a small dot to coordinate themselves. And then people stood in front of this simple diagram and just looked at it, and they were like, oh, this is tricky. I have to define somehow myself within these 4 coordinates. And this is the end result, that we get this kind of handmade, small and somehow personal diagram that we can then analyze how people actually feel. And this is one of the participants that actually took a jump, to put a dot in order to illustrate that she is like a real idealist. Uros, you want to say something else?
Yeah, we were kind of modest towards this idea of data analysis. We kind of thought maybe we should do small data. We should ignore this big data hype and do something really small instead. Try to create this data set that we can understand from the beginning to the end, and create something that is quite personal in the sense that each dot here really represents a person, and you can actually see this person, approaching the diagram and putting his own little dot on the spot. And that's something that we want to invite you to come tomorrow and play with us. So it's a very simple game, and it can be fun, and at the end maybe we'll get some really unexpected results. For example, that idealists all work by day and then realists all work by night, or that idealists all work by idealists they prefer monochromatic color palettes, and the realists they prefer black and white. I mean they prefer colorful ones. So the idea is to play around with this. And to be as live as possible and to be as personal as possible. So be welcome to be here tomorrow and play around with us.
I mean, it will be like Tuesday and Wednesday while the whole event lasts. Okay, this is one project that we want to present. The next project is some workshop that Uros did also this year. We wanted to analyze how can we move, because we are constantly very much changed to the display and to a digital image, and how we can move into space and how we can give physicality to data, because once there is an object and there is a physical object, maybe there is more emotional response, and if there is more emotional response, maybe there is more let's say cognitive processes that we can start or affect.
Yeah. This emotional response is something that we've been thinking about for a while, because data visualization grew mainstream, and it's mostly used in the context of either science or journalism, and people talk about readable charts and talk about data storytelling in terms of data journalism. And in terms of representing something that is the factual truth. But what about the emotional effect of something that we can understand using data, using numbers, using statistical analysis? There are two aspects of this truth. One truth is the factual truth, and the other aspect is something that Herzog, the film director, called the ecstatic truth. Something that we, in order to understand some phenomenon, we must be able to feel it, not only to understand it rationally. And we wanted to play with senses. We wanted to play with physicality, as Isidora said. We wanted to play with the different, modalities of experiencing things. We wanted not only to map numbers to, charts and shapes and colors. We wanted to map numbers to, for example, tastes or touch or smell or different modalities that we perceive the world in order to reach this experience. New experiences in order to create it in the context of experience design in the end. So this is one of the workshops that we did that was grounded in this idea. This was done within the conference that we organize in Belgrade. It's called A Designer is the Designer, Author, or a Universal Soldier, and it had to do with this data set. It was also a small data set, so we're still in the context of small data, and this data set represents the air pollution in my hometown. It's one of the most industrialized cities in Serbia. It's called Pančevo, and it's been presented in this form on the municipality's website. This is a line chart. It's terribly designed. It's just like a simple line chart. It also has a panorama of the city that's also some kind of a line chart. So you could actually write an essay, how terrible is this on so many levels. So we started with this, let's take this data set, which is, immensely important, and let's try to present it in a form that's not like a disaster, because this is a disaster. So this was our data set. First we came up to this this is readable. So we have months, we have this, indexes of air pollution, and we can see that the air pollution is kind of worse in the winter than in the summer. So this is readable, but this is like a generic chart that you can generate with some tools that you have on the internet, and with it you can understand what's going on rationally, but you don't feel anything with it. So we wanted to try something a little bit more experimental, something that has to do more with experiencing things, in particular with touch, and we came up to this. So instead of having this kind of a tree map in colors, let's have this tree map in the shape of this 30 meters long, like a land piece. We created this land piece where people are supposed to walk barefoot, because when they walk barefoot, they could feel different textures. And then we mapped the different pollution of different months. So if a month is okay, then we leave the grass green. If the month is kind of polluted but not that much, then we put these pieces of sand. If the pollution is kind of significant, then we put rocks. And if it's really, really bad, then we put these huge rocks. And we created this in Belgrade in March, as Isidora said, and played around a little bit. Like, people were walking, some of them were walking, covering their eyes, trying to experience the entire period of 60 months with this 30 meters long visualization, but also as some sort of a land piece or a land sculpture or something like that. Okay, so maybe Isidora can continue with another workshop.
I mean, what is also interesting is when you invite people to participate in creating something like this, it's also interesting because there is this factor of cost-effective thing. Basically, the material, you can just find it around. You can find stones, you can find sand, and you just need to buy 50 meters of the rope, and that's it. And when we are showing these photographs and there is a video footage of it, then people really emotionally connect and they start to understand the level of the pollution. Otherwise, if you show them just these bureaucratic and boring and maybe just generic digital visualization, they're like, okay, yeah, it's polluted. When they start walking on the rocks, they're like, oh, this hurts.
Yeah, we also wanted to play with this notion of hurting people just a little bit, because it's not okay to hurt people, but maybe to hurt them just a little bit, maybe that's okay. I kind of feel that the design world and the art world and the entire creative world, I don't like this word creative, but I don't have another one at the moment, is kind of playing it too safe. Maybe sometimes it's okay to hurt people just a little bit. So with these rocks and with these stones and with all these materials, that's what we wanted to do. And them walking around barefoot and with their eyes covered, it kind of created a special emotional context for them, so they could process this information cognitively.
Yes. Another example is also a workshop that our colleague Mane Radmanovic did also at the conference. And we also wanted to set up a workshop that would provoke students of graphic design to critically think about social networks. And their main point of research was the social network Facebook. And it was a little bit of embarrassing because they had a questionnaire when they, 12 of them within the group, had to honestly answer about what other people think about their profiles. Is it interesting? Would they add them as friends? They didn't know each other. They come from the ex-Yugoslavia republics, etc. And then they got the data set with very simple questions and very simple answers like yes, no, maybe, that they had to illustrate. And we prepared here to show you an example of one student, what she did. She basically basically humorously played what is our emotional relation between how many friends do we have on Facebook, how many likes do we get on Facebook, and she like illustrated as a kind of breastfeeding, station. So she made this carton of milk that resembles the mother's breasts. And the questions were like, do I post interesting posts on my profile? Do you share interests with me? And am I clear with the content that I am communicating on my profile? And would you add me as a friend? And what was interesting at the end of it, that the results were, this is like yes, maybe, no, that most of the people within this small group of unknown people with with a lot of mutual interest was like, would you add me as a friend? Maybe. Like almost half of them, 46% of them answered maybe. So this was also like an interesting.
Which is like the ultimate unanswering to the question.
Yes. It's like I cannot answer no, so I will say maybe. So people are like also like getting to we wanted these visualizations to provoke a little bit a critical thinking. I don't know how it is in your country, but like in Serbia, Facebook is so popular that we are like among the top countries that people like spend hours and hours a day on Facebook. They're just like scrolling, and I don't know, maybe
getting addicted to likes.
Addicted. Instagram is like growing as well, but like Facebook is like some, I don't know, 50 years ago it was probably daily newspaper. And there was also a question, is it really me? And also people were answering that. So this is like a student age, and we try to push it even further to like get to educate people who are younger than that. So we are also mentors at a youth research center, which is like one unique platform in Serbia where young people age of high school come and they get to know the science and science methodology and so on. And they invited 6 years ago. They invited us to establish a design seminar. So this winter we did data visualization in space with the data that was around them. This was like the map within the Serbia, who comes from which place, and they had just a simple tape in different colors, and they were like drawing a map. Or I don't know, they have their favorite game that they play. It's called Mafia.
The game, or Werewolf, the game. Maybe you've heard.
I don't know if you've heard, but they play it a lot, and it's a game where you have to be a good politician. You have to be a very diplomatic. You have to have diplomatic skills. So they were like making a diagram how one play, or like to illustrate one gameplay, Or they did a sociogram where they had a picture of each of the present student at the time in the center. It's more than 100 people, and then the people had to take thread and connect themselves with all the people that they actually met during the seminar. And also we invited them to, this is like a video, to map within this is like the plan of few buildings that the center consists of, and each person had to draw where they walk, where they spend time, and then they projected in the hall of the hotel these drawings which show how they use the space, where they walk, and the different colors are for the different seminars. And it was interesting because they get to know more about space. The engagement increased in terms of like awareness of the space that they are using. And to end our presentation, Uros will present.
I will talk about also one workshop that I did this year. and it was, in the line with all the other things that we talked about. I just want to go back to the Petnica's case and to say how exciting it was to talk about these things with the students who are like going to high school, who are like 16 years old or 17 or 15, even 14 maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
like the youngest student we had. And, to talk about a medium that's new, but that's also, developed medium like data visualization, but that's completely out of our school's curriculum. And it was really, really wonderful to work with them. And it was also wonderful to work within this unique context of this center, because all the other seminars, all the other fields that they can work with there are like natural sciences or technical sciences or humanities. And this was the only seminar where they can experiment with design, art, and this sort of things. And within this context, it was really it was really exciting to see how this interdisciplinary approach and how this interdisciplinary context can create really beautiful results even for young students. So we kind of felt that it could be a model for some further experiments and for doing these things more with younger people. Okay, this is something that I did with a group that was, in terms of age, very diverse. I think the youngest participant was going to high school, and the oldest one was like 55 years old. And we wanted to take a data set that's A, small, that's B, not really hard to understand in terms of you don't really need an expert in order to understand it. And 3, we wanted to take a data set that's really important and unfamiliar to people living in Serbia. And maybe it sounds like it's really hard to find such a data set, but actually it was not hard at all. We found this data set of foreign debt of Serbia. So it's like a really, really important diagram. You can see it drawn by hand, but by one of the participants. Down there are years, and on the y-axis you have, the amount of foreign debt. And in the year 2000, the foreign debt was something like 8 billion euros, and then it dropped down in the first part of the first decade of this century, and then in the last 10 years it started to grow, and now it's growing exponentially, like the foreign debt. And it's really interesting how it's really hard for people to, emotionally connect with these things that are extremely important to their lives, because it's just numbers and it's just charts. And when you present them like bar charts or line charts, they can understand that it's bad, but they don't really feel it. So we wanted to play with this. And we found this little data set that's like the best data set I could think of for this context. And we were thinking about how to present it in an interesting way. In a way that could be a sort of an experience, and we came up to this idea that we use the sense of taste instead of the visual sense, because everything is so visual. We're kind of tired with visual. Like, let's play with the sense of taste, with the sense of smell. Let's play with this kind of underrated senses, but really, really important senses, and also senses that are really connected to our emotions. Also, let's take some drinks or food that are really important in the cultural sense, and of course that is coffee. I guess in Greece it's very similar. Coffee is culturally like the most important drink in the Balkans. Also, let's take sugar, which is like the most popular drug that we have. It's completely legal. It's maybe one of the most dangerous drugs that we have, and people are usually not talking about sugar in terms of drugs, although it's very, very psychoactive. So let's take all that, and let's take the problem of diabetes and all these metaphors. Like, we were trying to work the metaphor and we were trying to work the meanings. So we mapped the amount of foreign debt each year to the amount of sugar that we were putting in each cup of black coffee. So these are this you could actually interpret as a bar chart. So this is the year 2000 in the beginning. In the end, it's the year 2016, and you have these amounts of sugar that represents billions of euros of foreign debt, and then we put it inside of cups. Okay, so this is before we put it inside of cups, and then we put it inside of cups. and even it spilled for the last 2 ones completely unintentionally, but it was really like a beautiful thing because the depth is so high, even the coffee cannot take it. And then each one of us during the workshop, we kind of drank from each one of them, and it was really beautiful and kind of scary at the same time to see that the more you drink this coffee with sugar and the more sugary it gets, the more, you feel something bad in your stomach, and you can actually, imagine like some sort of collective metaphorical diabetes being, generated with this kind of foreign debt. Okay, so these are our projects so far, and we want now to open this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, if you want to criticize us, you're welcome. And Isidora, if you want to add something, you're welcome.
We even have a microphone here, so if you want to ask, just raise your hand, I'll bring the microphone to you. No one? Okay, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I would just like to invite people to visit the hall of the Museum of the Cinema tomorrow, and day after tomorrow we will be there, and we will also be very pleased to meet you and talk with you.
Yeah. Okay, I see a question there.
I just wanted to ask you, this is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
This is very interesting, but I was wondering because I have serious doubts regarding how you collect data, because data is very easy to manipulate in order to get out the result that you want to stress out, no? So, I don't know if in your research and in your, takes many, it's visual data, but it affects also how the input comes.
Yes, that's really that's a great question, and it's a really important topic. And one of the things that we also like, to deal with is to represent, ways data can be manipulative, and to talk about that with our students, and also to represent things data could be, gathered in a wrong way. Or is there really a right way? Or is there really a possibility for a data visualization designer to be neutral in terms of his subject? So all these questions are really, really huge. But we kind of felt that for this particular talk, they were kind of out of the scope of this talk. But it's really, really important. And I just want to go back and say that this data set was taken from the official website of the Serbian government. You cannot get more official than that. Yeah, and they did not even try to hide it. But that's an interesting thing. They were not hiding it. They were admitting it, and they were just counting on the fact that people are illiterate in terms of reading charts. People are illiterate in terms of data. People are. I would even dare to say that people are illiterate in terms of visual culture and design. So, like the huge majority of people living in Serbia would not be able to understand this as something threatening or something that's even, something like a negative thing. I even had one participant during the workshop, and she said, but why are we talking about this foreign debt as it is something negative? Foreign debt helps unemployment go down. So it's really, exciting, because you're using these things, maybe we can open up discussions such as this one. And the other one that we used about the pollution was also like the official data set that's been published on the municipality's webpage in this form. So this is not even manipulative. This is like straight illiterate or even stupid. Yeah. But I completely agree with you.
Congratulations! I find it very interesting, but I think that it's a next step to think about. It's food for thought, because we have too much information, but we cannot really process it, or we are giving too much input, but we don't really have the tools to fill it.
Yeah.
And to translate.
I also want to say that it's a great question, but this is also a proposition from us to all of us to think of the new ways or the old ways or very common ways, how we can this is the title of our talk, as experience design, how we can create experiences that can be more transparent or more effective in terms of understanding what's official data or what's personal data. We also encourage our students to sort of make certain diaries and record their own data. For instance, anxiety is one of the contemporary phenomena that hits us all. All of us that are 30s, 40s are anxious almost every day.
Millennials are anxious too.
So we had a student who she was recording how many times she was anxious during the day and what were the particular places or situations. And when she presented her data and when she visualized it, then all of us started to think, oh, I'm getting anxious at work, or I'm getting anxious when my parents are around, or when I need to buy a ticket for the bus that I think it's too expensive. And then people can become more critical. So this is just the opening for because I think the awareness of the civil rights in Serbia are at such a poor level that we as designers or visual communicators are just trying to open up more knowledge about the communication per se.
And also we are trying to do another thing. We try to teach our students not only the communication part, but also this like hard science part, like statistics and probability theory and distributions and all these things that seem hard and ugly, but they're actually both exciting and really, really important and not that hard. So we try, to incorporate these things so they would be able to understand what big data is all about, but at the same time to be able, to collect their own personal data, to have this experience of collecting data, to have this experience of, collecting it in a bad way, so they would know what does it mean to collect it in a bad way. It's not only about statistics, it's also about, what does it mean for me to have all these, numbers that say something about me, around me. Mm-hmm. It's much more than statistics, but it's also really, really important to teach them like the basics of statistics.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Do we have any more questions? Okay. So thank you very, very much.
Okay.
And all of you who got curious now are, again, I will just say it again, very much invited to experience data yourself. Tomorrow, all day long, in the other building, as already stated. And now you are invited to join us for the opening party. It's in front of the entrance. I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you the next days as well. Thank you very much, and have a nice night.
Evharistopoli.